Good afternoon, and welcome to the Friends of the Bancroft Library annual meeting. We're so happy to see a full room, and I think this is wonderful, and a beautiful May day. We'll have a business meeting after we have our lunch. But before we start our lunch, I'd like to introduce Lawrence Lohr. And if you're enjoying the wine, I'm responsible. If you don't like the wine, talk to Lawrence. And they have, the J. Lohr Winery has graciously donated the wine for our lunch this afternoon, and I'd like Lawrence, who's here from the family, to tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you, Fred. It's great to be here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming today. We're in for a treat. I just took a look at the menu and all of the wonderful activities planned for today, so thank you so much for coming. I am here, obviously, because I'm the wine sponsor, but I also went to Cal. I was here from 1987 to 1992, and my wife, Emily, over there at the very end, was here from 91 to 95. Yes, give it up for Emily, yes? So we've really enjoyed getting to know the Bancroft and Charles these last few years, and when Charles called me a few weeks ago asking me if I would be the wine sponsor, it was just a no-brainer, so thank you, Charles. The two wines we're enjoying today are from our vineyards in Monterey County. That's the 2008 J. Lohr Riverstone Chardonnay from the Arroyo Seco appellation in a town called Greenfield. Whether or not you realize it, as you're driving south on Highway 101, as you pass through Steinbeck country, you're not only driving through an area that is a major agricultural region, mostly known for row crops, artichokes, broccoli, lettuce, and the like, but also lots and lots of grapes, wine grapes. So the Arroyo Seco appellation, which is where we grow our grapes and where we've been growing them since 1972, is mostly known for Chardonnay and Riesling, but we also grow quite a bit of Gamay and Pinot Noir down there as well. And then the red wine we're drinking today is our 2006 J. Lohr Seven Oaks Cabernet Sauvignon from our vineyards in Paso Robles, which is just 1 hour south of our vineyards in the Arroyo Seco appellation in Monterey County. And I'm sure that there are a few of you who are familiar with Paso Robles, but if you're not familiar with Paso Robles and you enjoy drinking wine, then you really should visit us down there. That's where our red wine winery is located, and we have about 2,000 acres of vineyards in Paso Robles. And actually, I forgot to mention that up in Monterey County, we have about 900 acres of vineyards. And while our red wine winery is in Paso Robles on the east side of Paso Robles, our white wine winery is in downtown San Jose. And it's actually been there since 1974. So the Cabernet is all about that black cherry fruit. It spends between about 10 to 12 months in a combination of French and American oak. And it's just a really delicious, delightful wine, very easy drinking, and I think it'll go nicely with our meal. So enjoy yourselves today. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll hand it back to Fred. Thank you.
Not bad, not bad. I think you'll enjoy it. And enjoy lunch, and we'll come back and have our business meeting in a bit. Why don't we go ahead and get started with our business meeting. My name is Fred Gregory. As chair of the Friends of the Bancroft Library Council, I get to run the business meeting, I guess, so behave. I enjoyed the wine. Lawrence, thank you very much. Maybe I had too much of it. I'd like to start off with giving a brief report on the activities and some of the things that have happened at the council in this past year. we've had a number of really fun things. You see the exhibit downstairs, core of the Bancroft. That's one, and the Darwin exhibit that happened earlier this year, or maybe it was what was the fall of last year. It was just spectacular. If you're ever in Berkeley, or anywhere within 1,000 miles of Berkeley, make sure you stop and look at what is on display downstairs, because it will always satisfy. We had of course the usual orientation for the new members, who we try to totally confuse, the new council members. We try to confuse them and make them think that they are really, up against a huge challenge. But it's very simple, actually. Just come to meetings, clap when I say clap. We were able to participate this last year in the Napa Sonoma Film Festival's filming of the Rojo documentary, America's Wine: The Legacy of Prohibition. And that was an important contribution to that era and to the wine industry. A dinner in Napa at Catherine Hall's winery and home turned out to be a really fun event. Something that got started, Kirsten Weisner was really, this idea came from her, but at the Anchorstein Brewery in San Francisco, Leon Litwick gave a talk and drew in all the young alums to get interested in the Bancroft Library, and that was a very successful development and an entertaining event. Let's see if there's something. Oh, we had the symposium on California and Western history, with the reception and the introduction of the Bancroft to the Core exhibit downstairs. The Southern California group will be announcing plans soon for an event down there. So, like me, some of the council members and some of the friends actually live in Southern California. So we do like to see the presence of the friends in Southern California. Bancroft Jana, the fall and spring issues were distributed. So if you didn't get yours, ask why. I think the Bancroft Jana is a spectacular publication. I look forward to it every event, every issue. And the keepsake, Jim Spitz was telling me how excited Hans Baldorf was at the publication committee meeting, 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, telling people what this new keepsake will have in it. So I expect a great deal. I want to have Hans at this next council meeting so he can convey the same energy. But so we'll have the keepsake will be Arthur Brown Jr. He was the architect of the San Francisco City Hall and many other buildings, including the Bancroft. And Hans Baldorf used the Bancroft's material, which is always the material featured in the keepsake. He used the Bancroft's material to tell the story of the architect school and the École des Beaux-Arts, where Arthur Brown studied in his early years. California is an island. I hope you all got it. I read it cover to cover, and I thought it was really one of the best sources for the mapping of California in that period, when all the cartographers thought California was an island, and unconnected to the mainland of North America, and even at some point condemned the man who looked from one side of the Colorado River across to the other side of the Colorado River and saw that the mountains were there, and all you had to do was walk over there. When he came back and reported that, they said, he's a liar. Must have been fun in those days, huh? And then next year, the keepsake will be the clipper cards that were used to advertise the clipper ships that were coming from New York, around the Cape, to San Francisco, over to the Pacific, around the Cape of Good Hope, and back to New York, and sometimes getting caught in between, going back and forth between here and Hawaii and other places. But the clipper cards that were issued, or that were used by the owners of the clipper card, of the clipper ships, were some of the earliest advertising medium that ever was used, and certainly the first multicolored advertisements. So that the Bancroft Library has one of the most complete collections of clipper cards. So that will be interesting too. The keepsakes, remember, are sent every year to the donors that year who have contributed $250 or more to the Friends of the Bancroft Library. So we appreciate your support, and I hope you enjoy the keepsake that comes to you. On the development front, it comes as no surprise that fundraising in this economy has a challenge or two. It's tough, but I'm proud to say that the council, current or former members of the council, this year created endowments of over $300,000 for special projects at the Bancroft. Also, the Friends this year approved a $50,000 endowment for the special projects at the Bancroft, and that's an open-ended endowment, so that additional money can be contributed every year by the Friends or individually by anyone who wants to help top that up. And what's it do? It stabilizes the funding for our special projects, the oral history projects, the Mark Twain project, the Teptunis Papyri project, and those projects don't have stable funding. So with these endowments, we can provide that stable funding. We can provide for continuity in collections. Reminds me, this last year I got to go with Charles and Peter and Teresa and Mike to the Southern California, to the book fair. What do we call it? The Antiquarian Book Fair. This year was in Southern California, so I got to go to it. And these guys run around, they're always hunting for something for their collection. And you can tell it's the thrill of the hunt that keeps them going. And it reminds me of a line from Moby Dick. It goes something like this: God help me from ever completing anything. I mean, you saw it in action right there before your eyes. So I think that you should all be very proud of what you've been able to help the Friends do this year. And I certainly am proud of you, and hope that we can continue through this tough economy to provide significant support for the Bancroft. With that, having sort of touched on the the matter of development and the matter of finances, I'd like to call on Greg Price to give us the treasurer's report.
Please keep your applause down. Thank you. This is the most exciting part of the evening. You know, I sat next to Dr. Ed Chan, who's a new member here, and I asked, how did you get acquainted with the Bancroft? He said, I had lunch with Charles. I thought, well, yes, that's probably how we all got here. But let's run right into the numbers, shall we? So many of the things that Fred talked about, the contributions to the Friends, keeps that going. The keepsake, Bancroft Jana, the exhibitions downstairs, the outreach events, etc. Our annual budget this year is $180,000, and our annual revenue is $180,000, and our budgeted expenses are $165,000. And I have good news and I have good news. Both our revenues are up and our expenses are down. Yay! So we've been very prudent with. We've been very prudent with the dollars that we received. The fiscal year ends June 30th. So through the third quarter, we're 17% ahead in revenues and 70% down in expenses, or just 70% of our expense number. I hope that makes sense. What's that? 30% down. That's a better way to look at it. The area that we could all have you help with is just the number of contributors to the Bancroft. So compared to last year, we have about 20% fewer contributors to the Bancroft. So obviously, you're all familiar with the Bancroft. I'm certain you all have friends who have an association with Berkeley or with books or with history or with California or with Lunch with Charles. So any of those things would help tremendously. Thus concludes the financial report.
Greg was going to have to top up any downfalls, so he's very relieved here. Next, we have our nominating committee report, and then what? Charlie, after the nominating committee gives its report, do the nominees have to give campaign speeches or what? I'd like to introduce Charlie Stephenson, the chair of the nominating committee.
The nominating committee was charged with coming up with 6 people this year, and we came up with 8. And I think we have a good class, and it's the friends themselves at this meeting who are the people who have to approve the nominees to the council. So everyone got a summary of something about the nominees, and you can read that. I will mention the names, but I'll just comment on a couple and won't review the whole thing. Kim Bancroft, whom I have not yet met, and who is here, is a descendant of Hubert Howe Bancroft, and her father, Pete Bancroft, is going off the council right now. Kim, are you here? Kim is a professor, or was a professor at Sac State, and she's moved back to the Bay Area. Eleanor Burke was an English teacher at Lick Wilmerding High School, and one of our children went there, and I think they had one of the best English departments anyplace. So Eleanor is a friend, and I think was a wonderful teacher and a writer too. She's leaving either tomorrow or the next day to go to Vietnam, where the president of Vietnam will honor her son as the best lawyer in Vietnam. Eleanor, can you stand up? Ed Chan, whom I have not met yet, is a doctor in San Francisco. He's an oncologist. He's very active in the medical society and also in the Chinese community. And we're honored to have him accept our nomination to the board. Ed? And the last of the 8 who is here is Frances Dinkelspiel. And she is an author and a journalist and teaches journalism here at Berkeley, and recently wrote a book called Towers of Gold: How One Jewish Immigrant Named Isaiah Hellman Created California. And she is the chair of the Magnus Museum, and the Magnus Museum, which is a Jewish museum, is just merging into the University of California here at Berkeley, so I think it's perfect that she could become a member of the council too. Frances, could you stand up, please, wherever you... Now, the people who aren't here, one is Nancy Holt Gannis. She's from Southern California, and she and Gary Pomerantz, who's from Marin County, but he's not here either. But both of them were recommended by Leon Litwack, who is a member of the council and was a history professor. He's a retired history professor at Berkeley. And Leon remembered his students, and they remembered him, and he got them on the council. So, I mean, I think back at how many professors would have wanted me now on the council. Not many. But anyway, those are 2, and then Dick Morrison, whom I did know at Cal, and he's been a major donor to the university, and he's a retired investment counselor. And the last one is Shelby Gans. She's from San Francisco and was a founding board member of Cal Performances. Now, may I have a motion to approve these people for the council? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Okay. You have 8 new council members.
Wow, that was close. I don't think we've ever had such a close election. Congratulations, and thank you for all of you who are new to the council. Thank you for stepping up, and we will enjoy your presence, I'm sure. I'll turn the mic and the gavel over to Charles Faulhaber, director of the Bancroft Library, who will take it from here. Charles.
Did you take my notes?
Yeah, no, I took mine.
This is going to be a very short meeting.
On that promise.
Now, first of all, I want to thank Fred as the current chair of the council, Kirsten Weisser, the vice chair, who could not be here because she is celebrating her mother's 90th birthday today, and Greg Price as treasurer for their service over the past year. I mean, they really put in an extraordinary amount of time into this between the council meetings and the various committees. So, a big hand for them, please. We have 6 members of the council who are leaving the council, and Midge Ziske, Sandy Marston, Beverly Maytag, Dan Gregory, Jim Spitz, and Catherine Schwarzenbach, I believe, are here. So could I ask them to stand? There they are. Jim has been chairing the Publications Committee, and Catherine's been chairing the Southern California Committee. And then we, of course, have our new council members. Could I ask all of the people who are either current, former, or future council members to stand? And these are the core of the Friends of the Bancroft Library, and they are just so invaluable. Alan Littman over here was the man who was responsible for the tapes that we have on the 6 lectures on early California history. And then he got Wells Fargo to come up with about $100,000 for that some years ago. I mean, this is the kind of thing that the council members do. So it's absolutely wonderful. I am blessed with a tremendous staff at Bancroft. I'm not a librarian by training, and thank God I do not have to worry about running the library. I have the staff members who do that. The first 2 ladies I want to mention are Diana Virgil and Liz Gardner, who are standing here. They organized today's lunch. And so far, so good. So thanks. And I'd like to ask the Bancroft staff members who are here to stand as well. Teresa Salazar, curator of the Rare Book and curator of Western Americana Collection. Peter Hamp, deputy director. Wave, Peter. David DiLorenzo, head of technical services, associate director. Anybody over on this side? Catherine Pope, who is the secretary of the Friends, and Jack Vanoy, back in the back, curator of pictorial collections. Everything good that happens in Bancroft is due because of them, and everything bad is my fault. This is an absolutely wonderful staff. I mean, Peter has been here since 1970. Tony Bliss, who could not be here today, the curator of Rare Book and Manuscript Collections, has been here since 1980. Jack has been started in 1990 as director of special projects, and then the head of technical services, and now the pictorial curator. So the staff are professionals who've been around a long, long time. They know the collections. They know what we can do with them. Teresa, you're coming up on your 10th year? 11th, my God. Of course, the big change over the last 5 years was this building. And I'm not even going to try to describe how wonderful it is to be back in it. A year and a half later, we're still in shakedown mode, however, and architects like Felix know about this. We're going to be doing a little bit more shelving construction at the end of May. The architects and the shelving contractors and the seismic engineers got it a little bit wrong, so we're going to have to do some strengthening of some of the 12-foot high compact shelving. Thanks to Greg Price, who is an executive with Volunteer Match. It's only taken us 9 months, but we now have a program that we can start to use volunteers in the Bancroft Library. We will have 2 people starting in the very near future who are going to be helping us on the registration desk. We'll have some other opportunities that will be announced on Volunteer Match in the not too distant future. I was going to give a list of significant acquisitions, but I'm only going to mention one thing, and Fred beat me to it. We are this close to signing a formal agreement with the Magnus Museum for it to be incorporated into the University of California library. And I have to, Frances is the current president, Frances Dinkelspiel is the current president of the Magnus board, and she has been so instrumental in helping us smooth out all, merging a relatively small organization like the Magnus into a very large organization like Berkeley is a fraught exercise. But thanks to a lot of goodwill on the part of a lot of people, thanks to the efforts of Warren Hellman and Tad Toby, this is going to happen. And the Magnus collections of Jewish art and life will be a unit of the Bancroft Library, starting as soon as we sign the agreement, which will be sometime within the next 2 weeks or so. For us, this was a no-brainer. The complementarity of the Magnus collections of Western Jewish archives and their artifacts dovetails perfectly with the kinds of things that we have at Bancroft. In fact, in some cases, we have divided collections which are now going to be united. They had Haas family collections. We have Haas family collections. So we will be, over the course of the next year, we will be establishing a group that will be, in some sense, a subset of the Friends of the Bancroft Library, focused on the Magnus collections, just as we have the Mark Twain Luncheon Club, which is focused on the Mark Twain project. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody to make this work. Fred has talked about the exhibitions, about the symposium this past spring on the 150th anniversary of I won't say the foundation, but the creation of the Bancroft Library as the business library of Hubert Howe Bancroft in 1860. Our exhibition in the fall is going to be celebrating Mexico, from the Grito de Hidalgo to the Mexican Revolution, 1810, 1910, 2010. This is actually going to be two concurrent exhibitions, one here and one at Stanford. And Jack Vanoy and Teresa are the co-curators of the Bancroft exhibition. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon. We're doing a joint catalog, which is going to be absolutely stunning. We'll have an opening reception on September 3rd, Thursday, September 2nd, mark your calendars. And then in October, the end of October, October 22nd, 23rd, we're going to have a symposium with scholars from Mexico and the United States talking about Mexico's unfinished revolutions. So those of you start brushing up on your Spanish. We have increasingly been loaning materials from the Bancroft collection to other institutions around the world. So Jack Vanoy reminded me that we have a set of Muybridge photographs from 19th century Edward Muybridge, who was, of course, the fellow most famous for photographing horses with all 4 feet off the ground down on the farm in Stanford. That's at the Corcoran Gallery in Washington. We have photographs from Muybridge's contemporary, Carlton Watkins, the great photographer of the American West, at the Fine Arts Museum of Montreal. And this past fall, we were the largest single contributor to Foto España, which was a multi-venue photographic exhibition in Madrid, and with our Dorothea Lange photographs. So increasingly, this is one way that we make it available for people who can't come to Berkeley to see the collections that we have. In terms of grants, we have, I won't mention all of them, but there are 2 major focuses. One is the survey of the unprocessed collections. When we started this, we thought we had 55,000 linear feet of unprocessed or partially processed manuscript material, personal papers, business records, organizational records. And thanks to grants from the Mellon Foundation and the Gilbert Foundation in Los Angeles, we were able to hire 4 survey archivists for a period of 3 years. They actually finished the survey in 2 years, and in fact, this is sort of, I'm not sure if it's good news or bad news, but it turns out that we only have 40,000 linear feet of unprocessed manuscript material. When they sat down and they looked in every single box to see what was in it. And now we have a list of everything we have, and we can start to focus on the things that are of highest priority in terms of interest among scholars and users. The other set of grants that we have are to process and digitize and organize all of the roughly 4 million prints and negatives from the San Francisco Examiner photographic morgue. All of these grants are due to David DiLorenzo. Come on, stand up, David. Yeah. David writes our grant proposals. He has been extraordinarily successful in getting money from NEH, from the National Historical Records and Preservation Commission, and other organizations, foundations. And then he has to supervise all of these and make sure that the work actually gets done. And it does get done. It gets done on time and on budget, which is and I don't have to do it, so that's great. Digital projects, those of you who are into Web 2.0 materials, there is a Bancroft Facebook page, and I hope you all become fans. Every day we have a digital object of the day, which is selected by staff led by Mary Ailings, our digital projects, our digital archivist. She gets very annoyed at me when I call her digital projects archivist, because she's been doing this for 13 years, and she says, it's not a project anymore. So, for example, since today is May Day, International Workers' Day, she digitized a photograph of Harry Bridges, the the leader of the Longshoremen's Union, leading the general strike in 1934 in San Francisco. Research programs, the Mark Twain folks are working feverishly on Mark Twain's autobiography. The first of 3 volumes will be published on the anniversary of his death was I think April 21st, centennial. And he sealed portions of the autobiography for 100 years. So there will be things in there that no one has never seen and published until the release of the autobiography in this coming fall, probably on the 175th anniversary of his birth at the end of November. And I've seen some of the things that were unpublished, and there are going to be no scandal, because first of all, the folks that he's talking about, no one even remembers who they were anymore. But it is an extraordinarily interesting book. There have been 2 published versions of his autobiography, but they were done by one was by his literary executor, Albert Bigelow Paine, and the other was by a scholar, and they didn't like the way Twain organized his autobiography, and so they chopped it up and put it in the order that they thought it should have been, in other words, from cradle to grave. But he didn't do it that way. He did it thematically. So this is the first time that Mark Twain's autobiography will be published as he wanted it published. And he finished it about 1.5 years before he died. The Regional Oral History Office, we have ongoing projects on the origins of venture capitalism in the Bay Area, and we just finished 4 hours of interviewing with Pete Bancroft, who was on that business very early on. We continue to work on the project with Kaiser Permanente. We have just finished the 75th anniversary project on SF MoMA. Interviewed about 50 people for that. We have another contract to continue the work with the Rosie the Riveter National Home Front Monument in Richmond, interviewing people who were in Richmond during and after World War II. We are finishing up a project with the Port of Oakland. We are finishing up the individual interview with Regent Richard Blum, Dianne Feinstein's husband. And we have just started a new program. In fact, it's just getting off the ground now. The Shorenstein Program on Policy, Politics, and Values. This is with funding from Walter Shorenstein. This was announced at his 95th birthday party in February. And we were fortunate that President Clinton was able to show up and thank Walter for all of his political help, primarily. The first project, this is going to be a 3-year program. The first project is called Slaying the Dragon of Debt. And, it can't be much more appropriate now, but it's focusing on the last years of the first Bush administration and the Clinton administration and how they went from deficit to surplus. And what are the lessons that we can learn from that today? The second one is even more difficult. It's going to be gridlock in Washington. How do we fix it? And how do we, so talking to people who have been involved in trying to bridge the gap between the two parties. The budget, most of you are California residents. It's talk about gridlock in Sacramento. It's been terribly, terribly difficult for the university. The governor promises he will not sign a budget without increasing the funding for higher education. I have a bridge I would love to sell you too. The deans and directors have been asked to plan for a 5% budget cut. I think we'll be lucky if it's a flat budget. If we do that, I think we won't be any worse off than we are now. The library has had a hiring freeze for the last 3 years. So when people leave, and we have lost a lot of people who had temporary appointments, and they, then they finished after a year and a half, 2 years. We haven't been able to replace those, so the work doesn't go away. The staff have more work, fewer hands to do it, and I have told everybody that they cannot resign, they cannot retire, and they cannot die. So far, the last ladder has worked out. Fred talked about the development. Over the last 3 years, once we finished the very successful project to raise money for this building, this is $35 million from the state of California, $35 million from private funding. And boy, were we lucky, because we started raising money after the economy came back from the dot-com bust, and we finished before the current recession started. But it was like, okay, we're on a roll, let's continue. And we have, as part of the campus's, $3.5 billion capital campaign, which is supposed to go through 2013. The library's share of that is $100 million, and Bancroft's share of that is $15 million. That doesn't mean we get $15 million. That means we're supposed to raise $15 million. Over the last 3 years, we've raised about $2 million for endowments. We're trying to raise $5 million for Mark Twain, $5 million for the Regional Oral History Office, and $3 million for the Teptunis Papyrite Project. As I say, about $2 million over the last 3 years. The bulk of that has been for the Mark Twain project. So that's not quite $1.5 million for Mark Twain, and then bits and pieces for other things. We still have the challenge grant from the Corrett Foundation to provide ongoing current support for the Mark Twain project. That was originally $600,000. We raised about $450,000. We have $150,000 left to go. So any contribution to Mark Twain is matched one-to-one by the Corrett Foundation. We have, as Fred mentioned, we publish a keepsake every year based on the collections. We have a whole storeroom downstairs full of ones going back to the 1950s and 60s. We have put a very large selection out in the stone seminar room on your left as you're going out. I encourage you to take as many of them as you wish, to fill in your own collection, to give to friends who might be interested in Bancroft. They are really very, I won't say all of them, most of them are very, very interesting. The biggest, fattest thing out there is on the writings of Frederick J. Teggart, who was the first curator of the Bancroft Library and became a professor of history at Cal, and it's about that thick, and it was done by one of his students, and we put them out and people take them. I do not understand why. Does anybody have any questions? No. Okay, good. Pressing on. This is what comes next is the best part of the meeting for me, because it's our annual awards. I learned yesterday that the Library Research Prize, one of the Library Research Prizes, was awarded to a freshman in our essentially it's a Bancroft research class. It's called Archival Research Working with Primary Sources in the Humanities, Social Sciences, Sciences, and Engineering. And it is co-taught by Jim Casey, who is a professor of engineering, Peter Hanf, and David Farrell. And it has, I think, how many students this year, Peter? 17 students. They meet once a week in Bancroft, and they look at these primary source materials, and they have to write a paper on the basis of these materials. So this young man, Matthew Reedforce, received a Library Research Prize for Patriotism versus Principles, Perspectives on the Eve of the Mexican War. When I was a freshman, I could not have done anything like that. I mean, so the kids are a lot better than they are. I'm going to we have about 10 of the students who have received prizes are here today. So as I announce them and talk about them a little bit, I'm going to ask them to come up and sort of stand here in front of the exhibition area. So we have an annual book collecting prize, the Hill Shumate Prize, which was established by Ken Hill of San Diego, a former chair of the Council of Friends, and Al Shumate of San Francisco. Ken gave us our 500,000th book in Bancroft, which was a first edition of the periodic table of Mendeleev, thank you. And of course, Dr. Shumate was one of the great collectors of California. So Anthony Wright is the recipient of the Hill Shumate Prize. His collection is on the traditions of the University of California. He got interested in collecting material about his fraternity and now has expanded it to the Cal campus. He's particularly interested in getting a complete set of blue and gold. So if any of you want to get rid of your copies of blue and gold, please see him after the meeting. How many do you have so far, Tony?
About 50 blue and golds.
50 blue and gold, so you still got about 75 to go. Yeah. Then the Bancroft Study Awards are full-year scholarships for people working in any field in the Bancroft Library. We have the two award winners, I think, are both here today. Tara McDowell. Tara is getting her PhD in History of Art, and her dissertation topic is Jess and the Language of Pictures, 1951-1991. Jess is the artist known Jess Collins, the artist known as Jess, capital Jess, and she's going to be one of the major focuses is going to be his relationship with his partner of 40 years, Robert Duncan, who was a professor of English and poet in San Francisco. And Hannah Haney, Department of Linguistics. Hannah's dissertation topic is the linguistic geography of the Sierra Nevada and Central California Indian languages. So she's going to be using the field notes of A.L. Kroeber and the other Berkeley anthropologists and trying to reconstruct the relationships among these languages using some very innovative software that has been developed by her mentors in the linguistics department. This is I think, either the second or the third year that we have been able to award the Gunther Bart Fellowship. Gunther was a professor of California history in the history department, and his family and friends established an endowment in his name for people who are doing California or Western history. Mackenzie Moore. She was supposed to be here.
She was supposed to be, she's not here.
She didn't, okay, all right. Hers is Our Hearts Are Unalienated from the Land of Our Birth, Isolation and the Americanization of Oregon, 1834, 1859. In other words, the way that the first settlers in Oregon felt about their relationship with the United States. And of course, the settlement of Oregon preceded the gold rush. And in fact, a lot of the people who came to the gold rush came down from Oregon. And Cristina Salerno was here earlier, had to leave, but her partner in crime, Linnea Edmeyer, is here. And they're both students at the J School, and they are working on a documentary film, Fire, Not a Natural Disaster, about especially the interface between the urban and forest in California. This is kind of something new for us. Although increasingly the Oral History Office is becoming involved with videotaping, well, in fact, we're now videotaping all of our oral histories, but this is the first time we've ever given a little bit of money to a project like this. So, then we have the Summer Research Awards. These are for students both from UC Berkeley as well as from other campuses who want to come to Berkeley for, or work in Berkeley for, you know, a month or 6 weeks during the summer on dissertation projects. Diana Greenwald. And her topic is Skins and Carcasses, Stereoscopic Vision and the Native American in 19th Century Utah. And this is a kind of a very interesting thing because the relationship between the Mormons and Native Americans was quite interesting. I won't even try and go into that, but it's not necessarily what you're thinking of. Nicole Pacino. And Nicole is working on Prescription for a Nation, Public Health in Post-Revolutionary Bolivia. And it was like, we don't collect Bolivia. And she said, yeah, but you've got the papers of a woman who was instrumental in setting up public health institutions in Bolivia. So that, you know, okay. Swati Rana. Her topic is Who You Call an Immigrant, Alienage and Nativity in the Literature of Brown America, 1900 to 1965. And of course, we have huge collections on immigrants, especially to California, from Mexico, from other Latin American countries, from East Asia and everything. So Swati is working on that particular topic. Claire Robinson. And now we get into the University Archives because Claire's topic is the California Memorial Union. In other words, the ASU, the Martin Luther King building. And you're not doing architecture, you're doing the organization or? The architecture, okay. And finally, Barbara Zimbalist. And this is very close to my heart since I'm a medievalist. The Devil in Disguise, Incarnational Politics in Medieval Miracles of the Virgin. I just want to, recap. So we've got 19th century Utah, Bolivia, immigration into the U.S., University Archives, Memorial Union, and finally medieval literature. I mean, this gives you some sense of the breadth of the collections in Bancroft. So congratulations to all of you. I'm going to come over here and we're going to take a picture with me and squeeze in. One more. Thank you.
Can I get past and plug our day? Because it's screening. Okay. It's screening this week.
Yeah. Linnea mentioned that the picture is about the Oakland fire, primarily the documentary that they're working on. Their screening is this week. When and where?
Friday evening at the J School at 6:15.
Okay. So those of you who lost your houses, and of course those pictures will go into University Archives eventually. So now the award that I've been waiting for, the Hubert Howe Bancroft Award, is given annually. This was started about 10 years ago by the Friends to honor an individual who has, in the footsteps of Hubert Howe Bancroft as a librarian, as a collector, as a scholar, who has studied and made us more aware of the history of California in the American West. The award this year goes to W. Michael Mathis, Professor Michael Mathis of the University of San Francisco, Emeritus, who is a great scholar and has been a wonderful friend of Bancroft. He is our book scout extraordinaire. He's always goes to the book fairs. In fact, when I told him about this award when we were down at the Antiquarian Book Fair in Los Angeles, and he was actually helping out with one of the dealers down there and keeping his eyes open for things for us to buy. There is a citation, a resolution, and it is in the traditional form, and I will read it. Whereas W. Michael Mathis, a native of California with Old Southwest and Rocky Mountain roots, has through his scholarship deepened our understanding of the history of Mexico, and whereas Michael Mathis spent many summers during his youth exploring the Baja Peninsula from his godmother's ranch south of Ensenada, and whereas Michael Mathis pursued his study of history at Loyola University, and whereas Michael Mathis, following his passion for history, abandoned his father's plan for him to attend Harvard Law School and clerk for a justice of the Supreme Court. They were friends. And whereas Michael Mathis received a J. William Fulbright Fellowship to study in Spain in 1962 and 1963, and whereas Michael Mathis microfilmed historical documents while in Spain for the Bancroft Library, and whereas Michael Mathis was recruited from Spain as Special Collections Library at the University of New Mexico through the urging of Bancroft director George Hammond, and whereas Michael Mathis received his PhD in history from the University of New Mexico, and whereas Michael Mathis served with distinction as professor of Ibero-American history at the University of San Francisco from 1966 to 1992, and here's the important part, and whereas Michael Mathis has published over 60 books and 250 articles on the history of Spain, Mexico, and Baja California, and whereas Michael Mathis has served since 1979 as the curator of the Mexican collections at the Sutro Library in San Francisco, and whereas Michael Mathis's passion for Mexican history and bibliography evolved into a passion for collecting in that field, and whereas Michael Mathis donated his historical library of 45,000 volumes to found the Biblioteca Mathis, the Mathis Library, in the Colegio de Jalisco, Guadalajara, and whereas Michael Mathis, for his services to the culture and history of Mexico and Spain, has received numerous awards, including the Mexican Order of the Águila Azteca, the Aztec Eagle, and the Spanish Order of Isabel la Católica, and an honorary doctorate from the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Michael Mathis be honored as the recipient of the Hubert Howe Bancroft Award for the year 2010, and be it further resolved that the award be presented at the 63rd Annual Meeting of the Friends of the Bancroft Library, May 1st, 2010, at the Bancroft Library.
Charles threatened me the other day when I've been doing research here for a couple of days. I don't just come to the Bancroft Library to enjoy an afternoon like this. I believe I have to do a little bit of work here once in a while. He said I'd have to give an hour-and-a-half lecture today, and I won't do that in spite of that. But I began my relationship with the Bancroft Library 50 years ago. I was reflecting on that, seeing that this was a 150-year anniversary of the existence of the Bancroft Library. It began when I met George Peter Hammond, who became one of my mentors. He had a lot of faith in me as an historian, and I'll never I'll never forget George Hammond. Wonderful man. And he led me to meet some other people here who are no longer here, but who would, I think, have enjoyed today and seeing me here to receive this magnificent award. Apart from Dr. Hammond, Bob Becker, Jim Hart, and Vivian Fisher, all of whom were very, very dear and close friends of mine who are no longer with us, but who were part of my experience here at the Bancroft Library, which I'm proud to say extends now a half a century. And I am deeply appreciative of all of you for coming here today, for honoring me in this way. To all my friends at the current Bancroft Library, beginning, of course, with Charles and everybody else who's been so wonderful to me here all over these years and enabled me to get where I've gotten, because had it not been for the resources of the Bancroft Library, much of the things that I've been able to write and produce in my lifetime would never have happened. So for me, this is a particularly important day, and I'm just as stunned today as when Charles came up to me in the book fair in Los Angeles and asked me if I would accept the award. I accept it with the greatest humility and the deepest thanks to all of you, every one of you, for this great honor and this great afternoon. Thank you so much.
So that concludes the festivities, the lunch, the business meeting, and I'm immensely grateful for all of you for coming to this. I hope you had a good time. I expect you all to go out and recruit at least 5 more members of the Friends, and don't forget to stop. Diana's reminding me, don't forget to stop in the stone room, which is on the left side as you go out the entrance, and pick up as many of the keepsakes as you would like. So thank you again.